In this video, I'm going to share the CV that got me my first role in software testing 10 years ago. I'm going to focus largely on transferable skills as that's what I had to offer. I didn't study computer science or anything like that in university. I'm also going to share what I would improve given what I know now, but applying it to the person I was 10 years ago, so the existing experience and skills I had at the time. Hope you enjoy. First, let's go over some details on the role I applied for 10 years ago. I think this will help give some context as to what you'll be seeing in the CV today. Number one, there wasn't any computer science or software engineering degree required. All that was required was a bachelor's degree. Second, the company was a software testing consultancy. Third, they wanted a handwritten cover letter. So in terms of selling myself and applying for the role, the CV was part of my application. It wasn't the whole thing. 200 applicants had applied for 4 roles, and 90 of whom did a handwritten cover letter. I found out about this from someone a few years or maybe a year after the fact. Now, I was applying for a graduate program where they were going to train you up. So they were looking for someone who was curious, interested in software testing, and I felt I met the criteria, but they didn't necessarily want someone who had an IT background. Some more good information to know about my CV. I applied for about 10 roles when I finished university. I didn't only apply for software testing roles. I applied for some management consulting roles and some, I think, finance roles. I actually can't remember. So you might notice that the CV itself isn't so specific for software testing, and I would really like to highlight that transferable skills is something that I focused on in my CV, and I'll show you how I did that. Now, let's get into the CV itself. At the top, I would say I have the usual details: my name, my address, my phone number, and my email address. I obviously have chosen to hide my details since I'm sharing this publicly. Further down, I have a personal profile. So this was something that I used to, I guess it sounds weird, like to sell myself, but like to further show how I felt like I would be suitable for the role. Now, in terms of attempting to adapt my CV for the role, I did mention IT consulting, but this was like the only IT consulting or role I applied for, so I could have explicitly said software testing. I made sure to mention my wide range of interests and how I like to maximize every opportunity I'm presented with. This is actually a little bit hard to read now. I talked about how I'm motivated, adaptable, and responsible final year student seeking a graduate position, and some of my extracurricular activities. So I6 Activate program was we had to organize events as a team, and the alternative budget competition is something that only the really cool kids do. So if you're into economics like me, you and a team of 3 others, so you're in a team of 4, would get to create a budget for the government and then present that. And I don't remember the exact details, but I guess at the time I thought it was worth including in my CV. I said some bullshit about aiming to make a positive difference. I like to think that that's a given, so that feels redundant now. And I make sure to mention my other commitments outside of university. So all throughout university, even I think since I was like 16 or 17 when I was in high school, I've been working part-time. And I guess I use that to show that I'm self-motivated and I can work under pressure when needed. Now, moving further down, I have my education section. So I studied at the University of Auckland, doing a Bachelor of Commerce and a Bachelor of Arts. My majors were economics and German, and I also did some papers on finance and accounting, as well as Spanish. I also did exchange at the University of Freiburg and got the Baden-Württemberg stipendium. In terms of key skills, now this is where I would like to focus a lot on my transferable skills. I decided to go for the STAR approach here. Now, STAR stands for Situation, Task, Action, Result. An alternative to this would be SBI, so Situation, Behavior, Impact. I figured it would have been useful to mention my adaptability or my ability to adapt to new situations, given as a consultant, so this was applying for a role at a software testing consultancy, you would be switching projects. And I didn't want to just claim that I had skills such as adaptability and strong written and verbal communication skills and analytical skills and teamwork. I wanted to describe exactly how I have them. I therefore made sure to provide examples of each of the skills I claim to have. Let's start off with adaptability. At the University of Freiburg, I did 5 of my 6 courses were in German, and one of this was a business maths course. Now, when you study German in high school and in university, you don't actually learn, I can't remember the terminology now, but you don't get the vocabulary to do maths equations or I can't remember what I learned maths-wise. It's a bit embarrassing. So I just kind of had to pick it up. But even that aside, studying different subjects in a foreign language, even though you think your skills or your language skills are pretty good, you realize how you still have a fair way to go. Moving on to the written and verbal communication skills. Now, the written communication skills, I feel, could be communicated. See what I did there? But they could be communicated through someone, through the creation of the CV, right? Because if I claim to have strong written communication skills and there's heaps of errors and this doesn't make any sense, the CV right in front of you, then what I'm saying is not true. In terms of verbal communication skills, now that's what I felt like more I had to prove. I talk about the presentations I did at different high schools on my exchange in Germany. So I think the idea was for me to promote German as a language or as a subject to study. So I talked about my exchange and what I learned and how amazing it was. And I got some great feedback about it after. And I thought, you know what? This sounds like an interesting experience to share. Well, why not share it? Analytical skills. The way I chose to demonstrate that I have them was to talk about the alternative budget competition that I mentioned earlier. Now, my focus, our team had split up to focus on different aspects of the budget, and my task was to focus on taxation, so exactly how we would earn the money as a government to, like the income, so to speak. Now, I had to do a thorough analysis of taxation principles and I did a lot of research on newspaper articles on the topic and different tax policies other countries undertake. And lastly, there was teamwork. So in software testing, in a lot of IT projects in general, you often work with other people. And I thought this example, so my experience at ISEC's Activate program, was a great opportunity to show that I know how to work in a team. So I helped facilitate discussions with my team members, delegated tasks to each group based on their strengths, and followed up and coordinate. And after the event, we were told that by a lot of people from the audience that our event was not only informative but entertaining as well. Included my employment history. Now, one thing to highlight is that this isn't my entire employment history, or this wasn't my entire employment history at the time. So the operations team, I worked at a energy consulting firm where we had to analyze the electricity usage of large companies and I can't remember, and like do something with the data. Honestly, it's been a while. I don't remember exactly what I did. So I only talked about my responsibilities in the CV. I didn't at all mention exactly how I added value. I have been a part-time maths, economics, and German tutor pretty much all through university. So I would often prepare homework for the student, explain theories, and also when they had exams coming up or assignments, we'd come up with goals together. So we'd work together and set a goal to be like, okay, well, this is where we are now, this is where we'd like to be, and how do we get there? And then German ambassador. So the presentations that I mentioned earlier around my, to show that I have strong verbal communication skills, I actually earned money to do those presentations at different high schools. This, as I said earlier, this isn't my entire employment history. I didn't want to waste space on my CV by talking about my experience working at an ice cream shop. I did that for like 6 months or a year. I worked also at a cake shop. I did checkout at a supermarket for I think about a year. I did waitressing as well. I did promo stuff where you like go to events and give away stuff. So I only really tried to include experience that I thought was relevant. And lastly, there is, I've got the interests and the referees section. So referees, available upon request, pretty standard. And then interests, I like pretty much the same interests still. I don't really swim much these days or play tennis. But other than that, I'm still pretty much the same person. Now let's have a look at how I would improve my CV given what I know now. Starting from the top, I would include a LinkedIn profile and a blog or site if I had any. Personal profile, I felt I wasted some words. The first sentence, I do not believe added any value, therefore I would skip it. Same goes with the first sentence in the second paragraph. I kind of think it should be a given that someone aims to make a positive difference. So I would get rid of that. I would leave my education and key skills sections I'd leave them largely alone. If anything, I would tidy up the formatting a little bit, but I wouldn't waste too much energy on that. Extracurricular activities, I would also leave alone, maybe tidy up the formatting slightly, make sure the margins are lined up. But the employment history is where I would probably put in the most work. I mentioned the star or SBI approach to how I did the skills section, I would apply the same to my employment history and not just talk about my responsibilities, but be clear as to how exactly I added value at each of my past roles. Now, I hope seeing the CV that got me my first role gives you some ideas if you are looking to get your foot in the door in software testing. Please don't see this as what you should do necessarily, but I hope it gives you some ideas or some inspiration when applying for jobs. If you have any questions, feel free to write a comment below, and I'm going to also provide some links to resources that can be useful when creating CVs in the description box. If you liked this video, like it, and subscribe if you haven't already. See ya.